This might be a little controversial, but personally, I think that libraries and community centers are a good thing. I'm Botanical Lich, and here is the bee. And I say that that's controversial because it does seem like recently there have been a lot of people who have been wanting to police what is available in libraries and restrict the knowledge and the people that can access that knowledge, or just shut them down altogether. And there have been people who have been wanting to segregate community centers and restrict access to who is able to access those services. I was under the impression that everyone believed that libraries were good because libraries provide free or close to free access to knowledge for anyone who registers for a library card. It allows people to look into book series and fiction and things that they're interested in but aren't necessarily ready to spend money on. It allows people to look into subjects that they may be interested in learning about and decide whether that is something that they actually want to pursue. And many of them even provide internet access to people who have limited or no internet access themselves. When it comes to the libraries, there has been a lot of people and community members and parents making complaints to public officials about the contents of library books. Because libraries are generally public institutions, they have to listen to the public officials that they are beholden to, and those public officials will listen to the members of the public. So if there are loud voices complaining about the contents of books, there's going to be pressure to change how libraries operate. While I believe that libraries shouldn't be pushing their own political agendas, and that some people recently have started to politicize inclusivity, for libraries specifically, their mission is to disseminate knowledge to the wider community. They are there to make materials available for everyone in a community. As such, equity and inclusion is furthering the library's mission and shouldn't be thought of as political. Not that I think that inclusion should ever be thought of as political. That's part of the reason why I think it might be good if a good billionaire or someone who had the resources came in and established some sort of private library. In general, the arguments against a private library would be that content could be controlled by an outside force. But if the content at our public libraries is already being controlled by outside forces, that's not really much of an argument anymore. I do think it would be important for a private library to have some sort of rigor or structure to what they would allow the public to gain access to without oversight. I'm not recommending that libraries don't allow people to access certain knowledge or certain ideas. I'm just suggesting that it would be responsible in a private library institution to have either a robust tagging system or some sort of system where if someone wants to access information or books or other pieces of media that are inherently xenophobic or racist or discriminatory or that encourage self-harm or harm to others, that those books are kept, for example, and this isn't necessarily the best option, but for example, you could set up a system where you have to be over the age of 16 to get access to those kinds of media, and when you access that media, you are given a disclaimer, basically, that says, hey, this is why this is restricted media, and someone gives you a short explanation about why that media has been decided to be restricted. So, for something like Mein Kampf, they say, hey, this is written by Hitler. It can be used as a rallying symbol for those kinds of ideologies, and two, because it is only presented in a one-sided fashion, the arguments that it makes are not given the counter-arguments, even though there are easy counter-arguments to make against those actions. Sexual materials could be held to a similar standard, and by applying that standard, we could differentiate between materials that are explicitly sexual and those that have just been claimed to be sexual in nature. Having the standard and being able to show why the standard is applied to certain materials and not to other materials would allow us to communicate to some members of the community who are worried about children accessing materials that they shouldn't be allowed to access, that in fact, we are paying attention to what is being accessed, and we have decided that these are okay things for children to access because of the criteria that they meet or do not meet. While libraries can provide the resources that can help support communities, community centers, after-school programs, and things like sports complexes provide places to build those communities. It has been repeatedly shown that places with robust after-school programs, community centers, sports activities have decreases in crime and decreased incarceration rates, and I think that there are multiple reasons for this. Part of it is that it makes you feel like part of a community, and so you are less likely to cause damage to the structures of that community. But part of it, too, is simply the entertainment factor. Especially in low-income communities, entertainment needs to be cheap and easily accessible. Vandalism, theft, and trespassing are all very easy and cheap ways for someone to entertain themselves. So if there are no other accessible entertainment options, people can resort to entertaining themselves through those sorts of actions. Community centers and community activities can contribute to solving this problem not only because they are a cheap and easy form of entertainment, but because they help solidify community. It's a lot easier to go and play soccer on the weekend if you already have a group of friends who are willing to go and play soccer with you. Aside. Self-policing. One year, the town I grew up in built a skate park. I was never a skater, but I thought it was pretty cool, because the nearest real skate park was about 20 minutes away by car. Something pretty predictable happened next. The skate park started getting tagged with graffiti. To me, this makes sense. Skaters have always been a counterculture community, and tagging is practically part of the culture of skating. This seemed to shock members of the city council, however, and within 2 months of the skate park being completed, they erected a 12-foot fence around the entire perimeter. Apart from being a potential hazard, this created an environment where, in order to skate, you had to place yourself in a cage, putting yourself at the mercy of anyone who wanted to harass you. I'm not sure I saw a single person use the skate park after that. Personally, I think that the fence was a horrible solution to the problem of tagging, especially since there are some pretty obvious simple solutions. It could be someone's job to just whitewash the skate park once a week. This would cover up any offensive graffiti every week, and would dampen the desire of people to tag, as their effort would be erased within 7 days. I do think that this is a quite inelegant solution. My proposal would be to only whitewash the park when there was something objectionable drawn, and, at that time, to whitewash the entire park. This might seem like an overreaction, but it creates a sense of responsibility within the community. You don't want the schlong that someone hastily painted on the ramp on the other side of the park to be the reason that the artwork you spent 5 hours painting is covered in whitewash. So people start to police each other's behavior, creating a culture where bad behavior is discouraged from within. I have worked in parks and when parks clean up, and in those situations, there are times where people have told me to be cautious of the unhoused community. I have found that when you approach them with respect, they are very amiable to any sort of reasonable request that you make of them. You ask them to move so that you can do lawn maintenance, they're happy to do so. They even go so far as, while I am cleaning, they will ask to borrow brooms, they will ask for trash bags so that they can help clean up the space as well. And I think that there are multiple reasons for this. And this is more likely to happen in places where there are larger groups of people living together. And that is because they have formed a community. They not only want to keep the space clean for themselves and for each other, but also understand that if they are the one that is causing a problem for the community, if they are the person who is rude to the volunteer and end up getting police involved, or they are the one that is causing a larger mess than other members of the community, that can cause them to become somewhat of an outcast in that community. The presence of community creates better living conditions for the members of the community. And I think part of our problem right now as a society is there are a lot of groups of people who are deciding that actually some other group of people aren't part of their community. It can be religious groups deciding that other religious groups aren't part of their community. It can be wealthy people deciding that poor people or homeless people aren't part of their community. Or it can be socially conservative people deciding that anyone who displays a non-heteronormative sexuality or gender aren't part of their community. And when you stop thinking of people as part of your community, you stop giving them the same deference and the same rights as members of your community. That causes a situation where there are groups of people in your mind where it is okay if bad things happen to them. Or even that it's justified if bad things happen to them. Because they're not part of your community. They're different. They're other. They're doing things wrong. Because they are not part of your community, there's a lack of empathy extended to them. So I think an important thing is to bring people in physical proximity back into community. And a really good way to do that is having community events and community centers and libraries that are robust and intricate parts of the communities. So, what the heck are rich people doing? It might be a bit controversial, but I am of the opinion that corporations are trying to destroy communities. They're trying to create an environment that not only is it hard to create new communities, but that it's hard to even meet up with the communities that you are a part of. They do this because they believe, and there are some reasons to believe, that individuals who have been isolated are easier to make money off of than people who are part of vibrant communities. There are some instances where it's pretty easy to see why this would be the case. If you need to use a phone to call someone, rather than meeting up with them in person, that means that you need to have purchased a phone and you need to be paying for a phone subscription. If your only option for entertaining someone is to bring them back to your home to entertain them there, you are going to need to purchase the materials that are necessary to entertain that person. I do think that there are some other instances where the plan is a little more sneaky. If you are in a situation where your first choice for entertainment or for comfort, or even in some instances to feel a sense of community, is to go to something like a video game or movies or a podcast, those are things that either you need to purchase and have paid for, or mediums that give corporations ample time and access to advertise to you, selling you other things in the time that you are trying to relax or feel comfortable or feel like part of a community. So corporations take their power and their money and their influence, and they go into communities and they pay and push campaigns to defund libraries and community centers. Because when those libraries and community centers lose money, their services degrade. They're no longer able to give service at the same level that they used to. And when the services degrade, less people get the value of accessing those institutions. And then less people believe that those institutions are valuable, and so they are more likely to be willing to decrease the funding to those institutions again. All of this comes back to the corporations are trying to fracture communities into smaller and smaller groups. They do this by defunding community activities and pushing ideologies about differences, pushing our differences into starker contrasts, and getting rid of the places where we can form community. In those instances, individuals who feel as though they have become isolated start to be funneled towards communities that have been built around consumption, like online video game communities, fan clubs, forums about TV shows, and memberships to gyms and other paid activities. In a direct response to this, the call to action for this video is to go and participate in your community. Think about one of your hobbies or your interests that you would like to share with other people, or to get more information, or to figure out how those other people interact with that hobby, what they think about that interest. And then look for a group like that in your community. If you can't find a group like that, take a step towards creating one. If you have a group of friends who have similar interests or similar hobbies, start to get together with them. Try to schedule a monthly meeting where you can gather together and socialize and talk about your interest in your hobby or participate in it together. If that is something that you can do on a regular basis, consider opening the doors to that group to the wider community. If you and your friends all enjoy knitting, maybe you can find a local craft store that would be willing to sponsor your meetings, where they get the benefit of having a bunch of people come into their store, and your group gets the benefit of having a public space that will be comfortable for more members of the community to access. Leave a comment about an interest that you'd like to find a community for. You might be surprised and find someone else that's looking for the exact same thing. If you liked this video, or subscribe to its content, you can like and subscribe. And remember, freedom sprouts from the corpse of capitalism.